Well, first I'm going to say my son was right. He says I'm probably going to end up making a video on the little bit of maintenance on his switchback. This is a 2012 with ABS. So this will pertain to many Dynas, but specifically for a switchback, which is in the Dyna family. But he's getting a clicking noise. Been trying to narrow it down. We changed the rear tire. The bearings felt good, but we're still hearing a clicking noise, so I'm going to go ahead and change out the bearings. And also his rear brake, as he presses it down, there's some times where it stays where it's down, not coming up all the way. And you have to manually kind of pull it up. So we've kind of read online where there's like a bushing or a plastic sleeve, something inside of there that probably needs to be lubricated. So we're going to go ahead and take this apart and lubricate that as well too. So as you know, I don't put my mutt face in videos, and I always give you quick tips. I'm not going to show you every single bolt and nut that comes off of it, but just going to make a quick video to help maybe some other people that may be running into the same issue. So first things first, we're going to be taking off his slip-on muffler, and then we're going to go ahead and start removing the rear tire. Now if you're running the Bassini type of single slip-on muffler here, you have a 9/16 nut here. The bolt will be a 1/2 inch headed bolt there. And there's a little tricky one here where the rear mount is. Right here will be a 1/2 inch headed nut there. But right in between, there's also a hex that you'll have to modify a 1/2 inch wrench. Let me get that in focus. That you'll need to grind down about halfway to be able to get the wrench in between there to help hold that jam nut. That is what holds on the muffler. Once you remove that nut, remove that bolt, loosen up your nut for your clamp, you'll now be ready to take your slip-on muffler and pull it back. You have to do this so you can pull back the axle. Otherwise, the axle is right in the way of the muffler. Okay, the muffler is off. That's what I'm talking about, that you need to get a modified wrench to stick in there to help hold. Okay, once the pipe is off, I now realize, first time for me on this, this is nothing more than just a stud that goes in there. So I guess this probably would have pulled out, but I think it's still better to go ahead and take that nut off, and this way you kind of know what's going on, and this won't hinder taking off the slip-on. So that's now done. The slip-on is now off, and I'm now going to jack this up and take the rear wheel off. Now some can actually go ahead and remove the rear wheel assembly when you get to that step, and they'll actually leave the caliper attached to the bracket, but I'm actually going to go ahead and remove these two bolts right here and just take the caliper off the bracket. This is an ABS unit, so this right here is the ABS ring that the I can't get a good shot at, there we go, that the wire attaches to. So I'm just going to be a little bit more careful on that. Instead of fighting with the spacer, the ABS ring, that along with the caliper, I'm going to go ahead and just remove the caliper. And then also the belt guard, I'm going to remove this bolt and this bolt and just get the belt guard out of my way as well. I wanted to go ahead and do this first because I did not want to take off the rear caliper and accidentally push on a plunger into the master cylinder and have a problem with the caliper. So you're going to go ahead and take this off. I should remove the floorboard to make it easier to get at. Whenever you take this off, we believe that that bushing in there is what needs to be lubricated. And we're going to go ahead and remove this little safety clip from this pin. And then you're going to go ahead and spray this and lubricate this. And hopefully that should be the problem with the brake pedal kind of staying stuck down. Well, I'll definitely tell you that this was stiff. All kinds of dirt and muck inside of there. It's quite dirty. I had to use the old U-joint trick to kind of lay this inside of here and put a small socket on top of it and use a dead blow hammer to actually pound it out. So now that that is out, I'm gonna simply lubricate it with some waterproof grease, clean it all up, and reinstall. And that should now fix the pedal problem. Well, the brake pedal pivot was definitely all galded up, all cleaned, re-lubricated. Works perfect now, no issues whatsoever. The caliper's off, the bracket is off. The right side, quote, spacer is your ABS unit. Your spacer for the left side, this will go to the outside. This goes into the bearing. So yeah, at this point, we're gonna go ahead, I'll take off the pulley and go ahead and get new bearings put on it and reinstall. I think I narrowed down the problem that my son had on the switchback is the left side wheel bearing, not the ABS. ABS bearing is on the right side, but the left side wheel bearing has an excessive amount of play in it, and that's what was probably giving him his noise. Now again, I'm not going to show you every single nut and bolt and torque specs, but use the proper tools. You can get this off of Amazon for about 40 bucks. This will remove the bearing, proper tools. Got the long bolt that will be installing the wheel bearing. What you're going to do is you're going to install first the rotor, the right side. You're going to install that where it goes all the way in to the machine part, the very lip there. Take it in as far as it can go, and that's the first one you want to do. So you want to do the rotor side first. There's Gabby, our assistant. But the previous owner was not using the proper tools, and from the opposite side you can see how they beat up the inside of that wheel. Now luckily, let me lay this down here. Hold on. So you can see the old marks where the bearing comes down, and it's about an 1/8 inch from the machined area of the wheel. So this is the sprocket side. So again, you're going to install the rotor side bearing first where it's bottomed out. Put your sleeve in and then use your tool again, and you're going to press and pull more or less this bearing till it makes contact with the sleeve. This side will not make contact with the machined area. The rotor side does that, not the sprocket side, not the belt side. So luckily I don't even need to clean these up and all these ugly burrs or anything because it does not make contact. But folks, that's why you don't want to use a chisel. Just get the proper tool. If not, you're going to beat up your rims. So once we do that, then we're going to Once we get the bearings in, we're going to go ahead and put the sprocket on. They tell you do not reuse the factory bolts. Unfortunately, my dealer, when I went to get the wheel bearings today, they were out of these bolts. They're grade 8, 7/16 by 2.5 inch long. So just go to the hardware store, get grade 8 bolts, Loctite. There is a torque procedure to this. If you have a service manual, please use it. If not, you can find them online. I got one. I went ahead and printed it off. But whenever you go ahead and install the sprocket, I even highlighted it. Of course, use new screws. They even tell you don't reuse the stock ones. But what's really bizarre is right there at number 5, tighten the screws to 60 foot-pounds, then back it off 180 degrees, then tighten it again to 77 to 83 foot-pounds. And don't forget to use your best friend, 243 blue Loctite. So that's what I'm going to do next. The ABS side bearing is now in. Next step is, I've already cleaned this up, is going to be installing the sleeve and then the other side of the bearing. Right, girl? Right? Yeah. Okay, there's your sleeve. Stick it in where it goes all the way in and meets against the surface of the other bearing inside. And then you can see how it protrudes beyond that surface. And you can see the old marks, that and that. When you press this next bearing in, that bearing does not bottom out here. That bearing will now actually go against the sleeve. That is the proper way of installing the bearings. Okay, that bearing's installed. Put the sleeve in and got the other side bearing installed. Now we're going to install the sprocket. Again, installing the sprocket, I use the old bolts to center it. It almost kind of presses in, at least this one did. Sometimes it just lay right on there. It's almost like hub-centric, but I drew it in so it's nice and tight, sitting flat. Harley was out of their regular bolts, so again, grade 8 bolts, 7/16 by 2.5. Got the nice thick washers there as well. What's going to happen here is you're going to go ahead and install them. You're going to torque them to 60 foot-pounds, then loosen them up, basically back them off 180 degrees. I guess it kind of somewhat stretches them, sets them, I guess. After each bolt is backed off 180 degrees, you're going to now do a final tighten to 77 to 83 foot-pounds. So I guess I'm just going to go ahead and pick 80 foot-pounds for the final torque after it's backed off. And once that is complete, the wheel is now ready to be reinstalled. Okay, all the bearings are in. The sprocket is attached and torqued. Go ahead and get your wheel back into place. Push it forward. Get your belt on the sprocket. And at this point, now you're going to have your balancing act of sliding in your axle. Don't forget, add anti-seize to it. I've already got it cleaned up. I'm going to put some fresh anti-seize on this. The caliper bracket and in this case, I have ABS. If you have a spacer, be the caliper bracket and the spacer. In my case, it is the caliper bracket and the ABS speed sensor on this side. And spacer on the left side. Of course, the lines always face out. And it'll be the fun balancing act of sliding the axle through and tightening everything down to spec. The rear wheel is completely assembled now onto the bike. Of course, having a jack, it's nice to have a lift and a scissor jack, and that can lift this up. You can raise and lower your bike and your swing arm so you can get your axle slid in. But you go ahead, slide your axle in. There's the caliper bolt, the wheel speed sensor in my case since I have ABS. I've reattached the rear caliper. I lubed up the pivot points, so the caliper itself does have some movement to it. That's so it can float more or less. Spacer. This size nut, by the way, is 36 millimeter, or equivalent in American, if you don't have 36 millimeter, is an 1 7/16 socket. But this nut gets torqued down between 95 to 105, so 100 foot-pounds is smack dab in the middle. Torque that down, put in your retainer clip. Some may actually have an R clip. In this case, got an E clip here. But now I'm gonna go ahead and tighten this. Torque it to spec. Belt deflection is still very good. No need to readjust. Doing the belt deflection is pretty easy. You got this hole here. In fact, I was ready to try it, but you can get a piece of wire, stick it in there, and then you can basically measure the center of the hole and do the exact same thing to the other side. Put it in a hole, make sure you get to the center, and of course you can adjust from there if need be. But everything was perfect where it needs to be. I'm not going to go any further in this video to show basically how to replace your wheel bearings and some disassembly. And of course, the infamous rear brake pivot got all lubed up. Everything works great on it. No more sticking. Before you could push it down and it would stay there. You have to get your toe to lift it back up. All good on that now. Once you got everything all tightened up, and make sure all your fasteners are put together. The other side, you got the belt guard, put that back on. I'm gonna put the slip-on back on, and pretty much it's done. So I hope this video helps anybody who had any questions. Not too many on the Dyna Switchback FLD. Very common with other Dynas, but the Switchback is a little bit of a beast of its own, having the bags and stuff on it, but there are some things that are indeed slightly different. So I hope the video helps. All right, guys, ride safe. And you guys with the F-150 trucks, Custom FX is known for the switch panels. We have a couple new videos going to be coming out finally on that. As you know, I love my F-150 trucks and I love my Harleys. But we will have a couple new switch panels coming up in the future. So stay tuned for that. And we're now going to have a few videos back on the F-150s after this. Those of you who also have Harleys and the F-150s, ride safe, enjoy. See you on the next one.